Of the Exploring Information Security podcast, how AI and emerging technologies are transforming cybersecurity.
Computers now have primary control of critical functions.
Houston, recommend vector transfer.
Your go for APU shutdown on time.
Roger, go for deploy.
Nice to be in orbit.
Welcome to the Exploring Information Security podcast, where you will learn, explore, and grow your security mindset. I'm your host, Timothy D. Bluck, and in this episode, we will be exploring how AI and emerging technologies are transforming cybersecurity. With me to do that is Ed Gaudet, CEO and founder of Sensinet. Ed is a true leader in software and cybersecurity with over 25 years of experience driving product innovation and sales success across startups and public companies. He previously served as CMO at Imprivata, where he was instrumental in the company's transformation into healthcare. Show notes can be found at exploresec.com/EIS. Feedback for the show, timothy.dblock@exploresec.com. You can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can also rate the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We have a community we're starting to start up a little bit more. We've got a Discord channel that you can sign up for. Go to exploresec.com, select the community link, and you can sign up for a Discord channel there. We're trying to get some of that going. Recently had someone asking about, network engineer advice. So come on over there. You can also sign up for the listserv, which is a Google Groups where I will update on a rare occasion at this point things happening at ExploreSec when I have time. But also what that does is it gets you to the live recording, which is usually every third Tuesday. Sometimes we have to move it for some other stuff going on, but we will provide people an opportunity to join the Google Meet and participate as part of the live audience, if you will. And of course, those live events are always up on meetup.com. So this was an interesting one where I had on, and we kind of didn't really touch. We touched a little bit on cybersecurity, kind of hit the fringes of it, but kind of really just talked about AI and how it's going to impact it. I think that is an important conversation because it is going to impact how we think about stuff. I was actually at dinner last night with a friend, and we got into an AI conversation around how does that impact people coming up that haven't been through and had to figure out what's going on as far as the technology goes. AI can kind of be an easy button for people, but I think if you learn how to use it like any tool, it can be very powerful, and you can still learn stuff from it. So it's just going to be on the person to figure that out. But are we getting dumber? Are we going to advance? Are we going to kind of have a period of having to adjust to a lot of this stuff? Who knows? I am shooting for, and this is in November 2025. I'm shooting for December to have a live event with a fellow buddy of mine to talk about AI and just kind of get into really. Me and him usually have like a discussion. Oftentimes we're on opposing ends of stuff, but we're still friends, which is what makes a great conversation. So look for information on that. Again, go to exploresec.com, and really with that, let's go exploring.
It's always about the people behind the role. And I always find, or I found throughout my career, is that people manage these multiple personas. And I've never been a big fan of that. In fact, early in my career, it didn't really help me. It's like, you're weird. I think we're all a little weird, right? And we're at a point now in society where you can actually fly your freak flag a little bit, and it's okay. You can be authentic. And that's what I love about doing the podcast, is I get to have authentic conversations with real people. So I love your approach. So in terms of AI, I've seen a couple of different tech waves in my career. I think it's obvious now, but a couple of years ago when chat became available, if you will, I mean, we've been doing AI for years, right? I did AI back in '97, built a product that leveraged Bayesian inference engines, which is a type of AI, right? And but it was never really consumable. And when chat comes out, when chat came out, it became consumable to a broad set of people. And I think the possibility and the impossible compressed because now you started to see things that you could do that you hope you could do at some point with technology become real overnight. And that was exciting. And so in and of itself, the internet, I think, was a little more gradual in its build, if you will. And that sounds weird to say, but I remember people not really understanding what the internet was for the first couple of years, really grokking it and getting hold of it, right? And cloud, if you look at cloud, the evolution of cloud, that's been within the last 15 years, really. And so when if you look at the adoption of AI relative to these other waves, we've never seen anything like it, right, in the last couple of years. So I remember when I saw it, and I think I posted on LinkedIn something absurd like, if it takes a company, an organization, 100 people in 1 year to build an application, with that same application with AI, in a year or so, we'll be able to build it in 1 month with 3 people. Like, that's the level of scale I could see. And I think I might be off. It might actually be better than that. So I'm very bullish on AI and what AI can do. Now, there's a lot of risk involved with AI, and we can talk about that. Not just from a technology perspective, but from a societal perspective, right? As a society, can we process the consumption and adoption of AI at a level that doesn't kill us or hurt us in some way? And I think that's the thing that I worry about most about AI, because, where the robot being your overlord as a concept and idea played well in the movies, but still you could sort of say, oh, it's the movies. Now it's real. Now it's like, okay, I could actually see that happening. Now there are people that'll say, yeah, not quite. We're not quite there yet. The reaction that people are having now, sort of the hype cycle, right? That standard Gartner hype cycle, right? It's like we got really excited about it, but now we're sort of entering that trough of disillusionment in terms of what AI can actually do, in a quality way. And I still think there's a lot of things it can do in a quality way, but I think it's also, as we're absorbing it for things like medical application or healthcare application, we're realizing there are constraints and real significant risk with going too fast. And I think that's I see what's happening now is we went really fast, and now we're sort of like, whoa, put the brakes on. And so I think that people are, we're in this place where we're starting to really absorb the possible and less about what was impossible. Whereas I think initially we were sort of drawn to the impossible, and now we're sort of settling on, okay, what's really possible with this technology, and how does it affect us? And so, with that being said, and I can talk, for hours on this, but we've seen, as a small company, significant productivity gains in different functions within our organization. In fact, so much so that it's forced us to think differently about the organization. And we've made some changes that, quite frankly, have allowed us or put us in a better position to really take advantage of AI over the next 12 months. And those are some hard decisions to make, and because people are involved, right? And I think many organizations are having those conversations and or acting upon those decisions right now. And what I mean by that is, for reduction in forces or realignment of people in other roles, as their role may be better suited for the productivity gains or the automation you get through AI, right? So I think there's a lot of that happening right now. I don't really know, or I haven't really thought about the effect from a GDP perspective, right? Because as part of growth, productivity is a big, one of the big, one of the big indicators and drivers for growth. And so the more we increase productivity, obviously that's going to help obviously GDP over time. So I don't think we'll really see the real effects of AI across society for another maybe year or so as we absorb all of the productivity gains and we really are able to reflect on, okay, what did we get out of this? Is it worth it? Right? Because I think there's an accounting that has to take place where we balance the changes that this is driving, organizationally, but also from a society perspective. Just like things like, legalization of marijuana, right? Which I'm a big fan. I don't smoke, but I'm a big fan of people having. I'm much more of a libertarian, I guess, if you were to plot me on some type of political spectrum. I'm apolitical in terms of I don't have a party. I vote, unenrolled, but I believe in freedom and personal choice and those things. And so we're at a point now where we sort of swung one way, in the U.S. around the legalization of marijuana. And I think now we're swinging back and going, okay, what are the effects? At what cost? Because it wasn't free, right? I don't believe the fact that, you can smoke and it's no different than alcohol. It's actually better than alcohol, people will say, right? There's effects happening. We just don't know. We don't really know the impact of the legalization of marijuana and the fact that marijuana as a drug has gotten, exponentially stronger than it was, say, maybe 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I may have partaked then. I'm not saying I did or not otherwise, but there's definitely a change in the strength of the drug. So, and I just use it as a comparison to AI because AI is getting stronger every day. Like every week, there's a new model and something it can do that it couldn't do 2 weeks ago. And so our ability to process that is really taxing us mentally, physically, and otherwise. And I think I don't know if we really understand the cost of that over time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And before I came in here, I was creating posters I run security awareness on my company. And I created a poster a year ago. I could not get the words correct on an AI image, but today I can have it create, and all I just had to do was, and this is even Copilot, right? That people might poo-poo Copilot, but it's like I was doing this all in Copilot. And then if some of the other ones are really great too. And I haven't even played around with this stuff because we have people at work that are creating these actual full-length videos about different ideas and topics and like just funny little bits that is just entirely generated the AI. So you're correct. I think it is a little interesting that it continues to get new functionality, new different things. The thought though, I really want to kind of key in on is what you're talking about is we don't know what the ramifications are. And I don't know if you follow Cal Newport at all. He wrote like Deep Work. He does a lot of stuff about productivity, which is what you're kind of talking about as well too, and like really digging into that. I'm reading a book right now, a really good book by him called A World Without Email, which talks about some of productivity things, getting into things like agile, things like that. But on his blog post, he talked about the concern around the next generation of people and are they getting dumber? Because there's this study that shows like over time where you had to kind of do your own research on stuff, we learned how to like go find the information. Well, now the information is coming to us. And I think he was based on IQ scores have kind of like not just leveled out, but they're actually kind of regressing. So I think AI, and we've talked about this in the educational field of generating papers and the struggle for teachers to actually get people to create and go do their own research on stuff.
Yeah, the impact of AI on intelligence is an interesting one. Because I'm glad you brought it up because there is a certain group of folks that believe it's the dumbification of
right.
of civilization, and I have a different perspective on that. I think that it's going to change things, but I don't know if it's going to make us dumber. It's going to make us different. It's going to give us. I mean, that's like saying the hammer made people dumber. I view it as sort of it's a tool that people will use, and over time we will adapt, because that's what we do. We adapt as humans. We evolve and adapt, and so I don't know what that looks like, but I can tell you I use it all the time, and it hasn't made me dumber. I mean, I think it's made me actually smarter. I think it's made me more. It's given me more tools to use at a scale that would take me weeks, months, or otherwise to develop. Right, so I can. So it's given me actually more cognitive capacity to exercise, whereas in the past, and again, I have this job full time, whatever, like, but I'm also a poet, and I read like 5 books at a time. So, and I'm using AI. So I don't know if it's making me dumber, but it's certainly giving me a tool that allows me to evolve the way I do things in a way that actually makes me much more, I think, productive and effective, quite frankly. And it's like I have a partner. I don't treat it as getting an answer. I treat it as, helping me think through things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And test hypothesis. And so I mean, sure, will it make some people dumber? Of course it will, right? But I think largely people will adapt in a way that we've adapted. Like we don't build houses today the way we built them, 100 years ago, right? So I think that it will be a tool like anything else, and we'll figure it out and we'll adapt accordingly. I worry about the people that aren't using it. For sure.
And I think it's a nuanced thing. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I love it for podcast notes. Like, my podcast notes have actually gotten a lot more in depth.
Yeah.
And, valuable to people versus like me. I just want to, get kind of the podcast out the door 5 years ago. Now I can write it within minutes and write, blog posts, and I've even played around with creating blog posts out of a podcast. So instead, if you don't want to read it, you can or if you don't want to listen to it, you can actually go read it. But I will argue that you and I lived in a very different time without all this technology. And I think that's what I think some people are concerned with, is that the answers are just coming, and are you actually double checking it? And I think AI is, like you said, it's a partner, right? It's kind of that first draft, whereas I'm going to come in and then make the edits, but I know how to make those edits and what where something might be hallucinating and to your point, I do think we will also adjust as a society into using AI better, and we're going to continue to advance as a human race.
Yeah, and it depends on how you look at it. I mean, you could look at it as something that's a black box and net new and does all these things that is going to replace the brain, right? Digital brain, whatever. I think of it like an evolution and development. So if you think about how people develop code early on, like nobody writes machine level code anymore, right? Or I should say very few people, right? And over time, we've abstracted the complexity out of that process. This is another abstraction of complexity, in my opinion, right? And so the real, I guess, an interesting question to ponder is what happens to roles and jobs like software development, where this is impacting already, right? And I talk to my head of engineering, my CTO, about this all the time. In the past, up until recently, you kind of knew when you hired somebody on the team, you knew the function, you knew the level of experience, you knew what you needed, et cetera, right? And I think what's happening across the board is more and more people are taking that junior level role, whether it's that first year out of college or even, let's say 5 years, 0 to 5 years, right? And they're saying, we don't need those people anymore. Or 0 to 10 years. Like there's some level of subtraction that's happening with those type, that level of developer, and they're being pushed out, and that job will eventually be pushed out. People won't go to school for it. People won't learn. So then you have a very senior level architect or programmer or developer that's going to do it's going to be 2x or 3x, right? Depending on your math and your capability. But they have this new tool that is going to make them better, right? And even the functions around design is another example of change, right? If I can generate a decent design or UX with less number of designers, because now I have this automation capability, what does that mean to the design function long term? As someone come out of school, right? Because UX and design didn't exist in 1990. Right? Because you didn't
Right.
Windows 3.0, right? So it didn't really exist. It's a recent phenomena, a job that came up out of nowhere, and and people that understood quote unquote UX design from a consumer goods perspective, became the designers at Apple over time, right? And sort of led that revolution. But if you look at automation and you look at where AI is going, that's an area of concern, because if the tool subsumes that role, then you're not going to have those people coming out of school any longer, because there'll be no jobs. Similarly, the developer, I think is going to change significantly. And the concern I have is, okay, at some point we're going to run out of developers, because these senior level architects or whatever are going to go do their own thing, or they're going to go retire at some point, and there's no backfill. What do you do to backfill them?
That's a very mainframe type of thing, right? Remember mainframes, right? Finding someone that does COBOL is probably impossible at this point. Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think about that parallel because in some ways AI is a development abstraction, right? And it does other things as well, but largely you can abstract a lot of the development process that existed 3 years ago in a way that you couldn't imagine 3 years ago. Or maybe some people could, right? Yeah. So what's the accounting look like, right? And where are the jobs going to go? And where are those people going to go? And I think, in some ways, I think there'll be some good out of this in so much as the technical schools will be filled again. People won't be running away from the technical jobs like plumbing and electricity and building, and those are good jobs. Those always have been good jobs, but people have shied away from them for whatever reason, right? And I even find, I have my son-in-law, he worked at Bain, and he left Bain to become an elevator repairman, and he's just joined the union. And you know what? In hindsight, I told him, whether you knew it or not, that was a brilliant move. Because AI is not going to, in the near term, I don't see robots doing elevator repair jobs in the near term.
Right. Yeah.
Maybe in 10 years, 20 years, maybe, but I think it's a good move on his part. I do think deeply about those things. And then, there's AI concierge services coming out. So, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. One of the challenges in healthcare that I see is true patient engagement. We talk about it at a high level, but in order for the patient to truly be engaged, they have to be first and foremost an advocate of their healthcare. And I find sometimes, mostly we pass that responsibility onto the caregiver. And I think people need to engage at a level where they're responsible for their care. They're responsible for decisions, and don't advocate or don't delegate that to a caregiver without checking. And now today, more and more, or soon, we'll be able to check. We'll have that second opinion available. Whereas in the past, if I wanted a second opinion, I had to go physically somewhere to get it. Schedule the meeting, meet with the thing. Why are you meeting with me, right? I think there's a rude awakening coming in healthcare too, because now we're going to enable people, I think, to be true advocates and truly engage on behalf of their care. And I think that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it is. And I actually already do that. So I have a Whoop device that I've been using for 5 years almost at this point. And they have integrated AI into their app that now it's more nutritional stuff than anything. But I can still ask them like, hey, how much protein should I have after this workout? Or how much, what should I avoid as far as this type of food? But to your point, I mean, I think that kind of happened going kind of back to so much you were talking about earlier. We had WebMD come out, you had Google come out, they had WebMD come out, and I'm sure the doctors hated that people were Googling.
Yeah,
but now you're going to ChatGPT.
They hated it. Not only do they hate it, they put guardrails around it and they try to discourage it. And now, but I thought it was good. But it's like anything. A little too much information is dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. You also have to be responsible in how you use it. And with that being said, I will share with you that I'm an alcoholic, and I went on a journey 4 years ago to, for alcohol cessation, to literally just stop drinking. And it was a challenge, but I got my device and I found an app, and it was one of these apps that literally helped me modify my behavior in a way that I've never seen these apps work before. And it worked for me. And because it didn't just solve one thing, it solved a bunch of things that every behavioral app should use this app as a model, if you will, for how apps can get it right. It's called Reframe. And every day it told me what I was going through and what I was feeling and what I would be feeling if I continued down my path. So it just made me aware at a level that I wasn't aware. And I think most alcoholics, part of it is you've got to first come to the realization you have a problem, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a disease, and then you've got to address it, right? And the good news is there's a tool out there called Reframe. If you're a tech person and you want to stop drinking, that helped me. And it's not like it just helped me a little, it helped me a lot. It also opened my eyes to things like AA, because it had a forum on it, and it had an actual Zoom type of virtual AA that I could join if I wanted at any point in time. So it had this combination of things, changed my behavior, gamified my behavior in a way that made it easy. It didn't like have me do a bunch of things where I had to spend an hour on the app. It's like 5 minutes a day max.
Yeah.
And it's the one thing that helped me. So I think the right tool in the right hands can have it's changed my life, an impactful, a huge impact on one's life if it's used responsibly, right? It's got to be used responsibly. So anyway, I tell that story because, again, I feel like we're in a time where you can share authentic stories about yourself, and you couldn't do that. Mental health is another good example. Like, the more people that talk about mental health, the more we'll address it, I think. And it'd be great if someone figured out an app that could help people with mental health issues. I think it's a little more complex, but alcoholism, I would suggest, is a mental health issue. So at some level, so it's not just a physical disease too, right? There's part and parcel mental health issues as well associated with it. So I think that, technology does offer solutions to a lot of problems, but like anything, it's you can't delegate total autonomy to the tool just yet. And this notion of autonomous agents is a good one, but we're not even at the top of the first inning. We're still in, we're still, we're still getting into the dugout, I think, at this point. Like, we're still getting ready for the game. We haven't even thrown the first pitch yet. So I still think it's early days there, but it's exciting, right? Because, man, if we can solve, 20% of our problems through AI, what kind of world will we have in 5 years? It's a pretty exciting time to be in technology, for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, and it can feel overwhelming, but I do think, as you discussed too, is it'll. I think there's going to be some good to come out, but obviously there's going to be some bad.
Yeah.
That comes out of this stuff, and I think too, it's the prediction. Everyone's got their own prediction about stuff, right? You talked about things or developer jobs going away. People talked about tier one type stuff. I mean, we've kind of really seen that with the support chatbots, but I feel like too, they're going to create things like, and I feel like we're starting to see this in AI prompt analyst, right? That they know how to use the AI because if either, and I imagine we'd see this a lot more. My kids have probably started using it and will, continue to use it, and they'll get more and more familiar. A lot like we again learned how to use Google, and at one point it was, what's the number one tool in IT? It was learning how to Google something and get the answer, right?
And I will tell you, most people do not know how to Google. I'm always blown away with how many people don't know how to write a search query. And so I think that same people will struggle with AI for the same reasons, right? You have to have a level of curiosity, intellect, right? Fearlessness to try things and not worry, and just test things out and be a child, like when it comes to this stuff, to really see what's possible and what's not possible. And I worry about two classes of people. I worry about the people that are so far outside of tech that they might be left behind. Now, some of them will choose that life, and that's fine, right? And others will, for whatever reason, inequities, right? Environmental issues, and that's obviously a concern. The other are the people that grew up with technology. So I have 3 daughters. My oldest really, she grew up with the beginning of the phone. So the phone, I've watched the phone and how it's affected each daughter. And my youngest daughter is glued to it. Like she's glued, and she's facile with it. Like she's using it like a tool, but she's glued to it. Like, make no mistake. Almost to the point where I think it affects her ability to be social. Now, she's gotten better over time. And so if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not, but if you are, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Yeah. But there's some kids and there's some parents that they just let them go with the phone. It's sort of a detractor, they won't bother me if they're on their phone. And I mean, what are we doing there? Like, what are we doing with the time people spend on TikTok? I mean, I see some of the stuff they're going through, and I look at that and go, that's really what you're spending your time on? It's like, it's like if I ate a bunch, if every dinner consisted of cheese puffs. I love cheese puffs, but I can't eat them for every dinner. I'd be dead like in a month, right? Mm-hmm. So there's nothing there. There's no nutritional value to a cheese puff.
Right. I think that's just a tie into each generation has their own world of problems, right? It's alcoholism for one, it's processed food for, I think we're kind of, and I think the next generation, my kids, again, it's going to be an actual addiction to their phones, which they're going to have to really kind of struggle. And they might not have, alcoholism as much. And I think this next generation isn't drinking as much, but they also are very addicted to their phones and social media and the attention and all that. And that's a whole just, I think, different level that they're going to have to figure out and work through on their own.
Yeah. And it might even be scarier because it's so available, and there is a dopamine connection with that, with phones and how people design phones and how they gamify phones. And TikTok is, it's basically it's digital cocaine.
Yeah, it's built for you to continue to use the platform because that's how they make the money.
That's how they make the money. So, and again, it's like it might be a near-term high, but it's like if you look at some of this stuff, it's like, what is really but that's what's happening, and that's another class of worry, because I think you and I know enough, and we know our limits, and we're self-aware. So we know, all right, I'm spending way too much on my phone. I need to put it down. I need to read a book, or wow, I haven't called. I like to call friends. I love to pick up the phone and call friends. So many people are they become averse to answering the phone. I want to hear your voice. They want to talk. Like, we're doing a podcast. People come to the podcast. Right. Why? Because they don't talk to people anymore. This is their. This is their. This is what they're fulfilling their quota to talk to people right now. And it's scary because what's going to happen in 10 years if we don't talk to one another?
People just walking outside, or even in the grocery store now, right? They're walking around with their headphones in, like I said, listen to a podcast or something else. So yeah, and I think that's what we're kind of seeing, that there's, speaking of the mental health stuff, it's like anxiety, depression, and it's like, because you're not having human interaction. And if the pandemic taught us anything, the people still need to have some sort of social interaction with family, with friends, get away from your phone, things like that.
You need it. This is one dimensional, what we're doing now. Like without that, we're not human. Like we're not human, because you and I could be deep fakes having this conversation. right? Yeah. I mean, literally, right? I could be, nothing behind this, there is a body here, but someday there won't be a body. There'll be something else here, right? Which is scary. You're seeing it now. Deep fakes is a real problem. People are, you probably have seen this. People are organizing around these deep fakes and working at getting jobs, presenting themselves as someone they're not, writing their resume to the job spec, getting the job, and with 8 to 10 other people signing up for 20 jobs, sharing them, keeping them for a year, doing just enough to keep them for a year, and then moving on to the next job. And it's amazing that's happening. Like you could be I could be talking to you, Tim, and behind this could be someone completely different right now, and I wouldn't know it. Right. And that's what's scary about AI, the capability we have to, I don't know, just do really nefarious things to one another as humans. I just don't get it. But hey, there's evil and there's good in the world, right? Yep. From the beginning of time, there's been evil and good. That's not going to change. How do we deal with it, and how do we apply the tools and technologies to make sure that we're on the ledger, we've got more good than the evil, I think, is really what it'll come down to.
Yep. Well, and I think that's how it kind of works out. There's always going to kind of be evil. There's always going to be people that abuse the tools. I think there's some good uses out of even things like deep fakes. I think there could be some therapy, or even just some opportunities for, I guess maybe people to connect. But is there anything you want to plug? I feel like we've kind of dove into this. I think we could talk for like another 2 hours, but I know your time is limited. I do want to get to, like you've mentioned, your company, and then the podcast that you're doing.
So Sensinet is a third-party risk management. Started off in third-party risk management. We've extended into GRC, like enterprise risk management, and other functions for healthcare. So we help healthcare systems, hospitals manage the risk associated with mostly cyber and everything related to cyber. Their third parties, their ecosystem of suppliers, their internal systems, their internal processes that they have for data sharing, maybe for research, et cetera. And risk is, for the most part, really interesting. It's the one thing that makes us human. We've been dealing with risk as humans for thousands of years. I think the first dice were created by animal bones. It goes way back. People started to deal with probability and risk and leveraging those tools to make decisions. And so what's fascinating for me is the evolution of technology in any context, whether it be healthcare or other industries. And what we've seen over the last decade is every business process, every function in healthcare is pretty much supported by technology. Whether it's an application, a SaaS product, a medical device, a SaaS-enabled or tech-enabled service that someone's providing it, right? Or the business, like a laundry service, which is physical, right? Still has technical systems to support their system. So if the laundry service gets hit by a ransomware attack and they cannot service a hospital, and that hospital is large enough where they rely on that one laundry service, now you have a problem, right? So it's the impact of technology and the evolution of that impact over the last decade, which has really enabled us, Sensinet, to solve some really interesting problems for our customers. A decade ago, it was all about data theft, data breach, and that's still important, and we care about the loss of patient health information, or what's called protected health information, PHI, or personally identifiable information, or payment card information, right? All that data is like really important, but for the most part, no one loses a life if their data gets breached. If you're in a hospital, you or your mother, father, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, a friend is hooked up to a device, a life-saving device, and it gets hacked, or someone you love is on their way in an ambulance to a hospital because they're having a heart attack, and they're under a ransomware attack, that hospital, that ambulance gets diverted to the next closest hospital. Now, if you're in Boston, not a problem, but if you're in South Dakota, that could be a 2-hour drive. That's not going to end well, right? So the notion of cyber safety is now connected directly to patient safety. We've seen it through research. We've seen it through reality of procedures getting canceled, of doors shutting, of systems going down for weeks, months, even in some cases. So it's a real issue. So and it's happening quickly. Like the ransomware is only, I don't know, it's less than 10 years old, which is amazing. Like prior to that, it was all about the data breach. And still, again, we're still seeing data breaches, and data breaches, are problematic. They cost money. They're, they're an inconvenience. If your data happens to be sensitive data about your personal health, it can be embarrassing or otherwise, right? But again, lives now are at stake because everything is so dependent on technology. And so what we do is we help our customers really understand that risk, manage it at a level of scale that they couldn't do otherwise before us or working with us, and really build a system that is looking at the next 10 years, not the previous 10 years.
Gotcha. No, that sounds like very important stuff. And I think healthcare is a little bit behind, but getting caught up, almost being forced to get caught up to your point about, it's not just one hospital anymore. It can be a provider of that shuts down. I mean, I thought about when you mentioned that, like the Jaguar going on is in the UK, where that's ransomed, and that can actually have the reverse effect for companies that feed into Jaguar, right? If they're specialized to feed Jaguar, and that's kind of the lifeblood of their business, they could go out of business.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. There's the whole. I mean, we're more connected than ever. I mean, it sounds like a throwaway comment, but it's true.
Yeah,
and so these become more supply chain in nature, and you also have the vector of the supply chain, which is different than we've ever dealt with. Now you've got libraries, NPMs and GitHub, and things that we never even expected would ever be under attack are under attack. So it's exponentially more complicated. You throw AI into that mix, now it's like mind blowing, right? It's like whoa. So which again, it keeps us busy.
I bet.
But yeah, we just, I mean, as an industry, and like you said, in healthcare, the mission's so different. It's a shared mission. Everybody knows somebody in healthcare, either directly or indirectly. And so it's important that we solve this problem. And, we're not, as a collective, we're not making as much progress as I would think we should be making. And for stupid reasons, legal reasons. We can't share that information. Well, if we could share it or figure a way to share it, it actually would have a profound effect on our ability to resolve, respond, recover from these incidents. So anyway, there's a lot we could be doing, and I think we're getting there. We're making much more. I mean, every year we make more progress, I think, as an industry, which is exciting. But we have a ways to go.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else you want to plug?
No, was this helpful?
No, yeah, absolutely. This was a great conversation. Yeah, like I said, this is what I got. Sometimes I like to go wherever the conversation is going, and let's kind of continue to go down the path versus let's stop and let me ask my next question, right? So keep the flow there. And I thought we got into some maybe not cybersecurity related, but it still kind of is cybersecurity related.
Oh yeah.
I appreciate you sharing your journey with alcohol, because I think a lot of people, especially in cybersecurity, struggle with that. I've had a nonprofit organization on this podcast to talk about, cyber and sober. And it's the fact that and you're probably familiar with this, going out to events where there's a lot of different alcohol, things like that. It's a whole thing. So it's good to hear your journey with that, because I think even someone that's in the industry, and again, the AI ramifications, I like digging into that a little bit deeper, because it's not necessarily just a cybersecurity problem. Oh, the bad guys using AI. It's like, how are we using it to make sure, people at our organization are safer? How can, or how is it going to impact my job in the next few years? So I think those are just really conversations.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And the reason I share it is because I shared it on Facebook, and it was a step I took, which I wasn't even conscious of, but I learned later that when you make a public declaration, the odds of you actually succeeding go significantly up.
Oh yeah,
because you're saying you're committed, and you're gonna make it, you're gonna make it successful. So you've committed, and you've verbalized it, and you've told people about it. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I did it. And that wasn't even the interesting part. The interesting part was all of the people that messaged me afterwards. Oh my God, I have a problem. Can you help me? That there was so then from that day on, I said, I'm always going to talk about it when I can, because if I can save one person, if I can share my journey and it touches one person in their own way, and they make a change, it's worth it. It's so worth it. Right. And I wish I never regret anything, but I really, when I was younger, I really wish I had someone that instead of pushing it on me, again, I made all my choices, and I became an instigator too. So I'm like, I still make a stiff drink. But, I just wish I had that someone really helping me understand what was going on. And, so anyway, if you have a problem, and if you're listening right now and you think you have a problem, reach out to somebody. Go to an AA meeting, even just listen. It's like, I thought those AA meetings were like, oh, I'm never going to go to one of those. People are crazy there. Oh my God, it's life-changing when you go, because you just get to hear all of the other stories and the struggles, and there's no obligation. You can just go and listen. There's no obligation whatsoever. And I didn't connect the dots there until I went and saw. And I was completely blown away by the community. We talk about people and community of outreach. I've never seen anything like it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. All right, Ed. Well, thank you for joining me.
Yeah.